There we go. How's it going?
It's all good, my guy. Everything's everything.
Can you hear me pretty good?
Yeah, I hear you well.
Cool, cool. For everybody who is logged on right now, this is History Lessons, formerly known as Quarantine Sessions, episode 55 with Ray Rothchild, formerly known as Sugar Ray from the Double X Posse. Thank you for joining us this evening.
No problem. It's my pleasure, man.
So
Hold up, dude.
before we jump into a little history, can you tell us how you've been staying busy during these crazy times with the COVID going on and the protests?
Well, yeah, it's really been crazy, So, really, basically, I just been we got a club, so I've been, running the club, and we shooting a documentary about the Double X Posse. So we was doing that right before the COVID started, but we editing it now, putting it all together. And we got a little soundtrack to go with it. So we've been doing, that's what we've been up to for the last couple months.
Cool. Everything progressing pretty good now that we're opening up a little bit.
Yeah, actually, everything was progressing pretty good, but it looks like the United States is on getting that second wave now. So, it's crazy now.
Right. Yeah. Got to get it in before the fall.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. We trying to get the club open again and trying to get everything popping. And, the COVID is getting in our way, but, we ducking that, staying tight.
No doubt. Let's go back a little bit and work our way up to what's going on today. Can you take us back to where you were born and raised at?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey. Actually, I was born in New York, but I was raised in Jersey City, New Jersey.
What was a day in the life like of Ray growing up, early teenage years?
Well, I'll tell you, my early teenage years, man, I was hustling, man. We was hustling, getting money out in Jersey. I was on the block with it early. So in my early years, I was hustling, getting money. After, you go to school, and as soon as when I got into high school, we started getting money, tasting that money. And we was on the block with it from there. So it was a lot of block work with me growing up, you dig?
Right. Was there any obstacles you had to endure growing up? Anything that kind of held you back, or was it just a normal childhood growing up?
I mean, other than getting cased up from the police, getting locked up, those were the only obstacles that we really had. Other than that,
Right.
everything was smooth,
Right. Being from Jersey City, what were some of your earliest memories of hip hop? What did you see firsthand that drew you in and made you want to be part of the culture?
Well, I grew up listening to Grandmaster Caz and the Cold Crush Brothers and Dougie Fresh and, those guys are personal friends of mine. I was young when they came out, but, as I got older and started getting into the music business, I became personal friends with them. So they was the ones that really was, you know, focused me on the music, got me into the music heavy, wanted me to be a part of that, just watching them. Furious Five, Master Don, the Def Committee, the real rap pioneers.
Right. Can you give us a timeline of when Ray really started taking hip hop serious and picking up the pad and pen and wanting to pursue it as a career? What year would you say that was?
Well, actually, I was a part of a group from Jersey City called the Sweet Slick and Sly. And we was like the rap group that brought rap to Jersey City. You feel me? We 5 minutes from Manhattan through the Lincoln, through the Holland Tunnel. So we spent a lot of time going back and forth to New York. And while we was moving back and forth to Delancey, Times Square, 42nd Street, we cut into the rap in the early stages of it. So that was what I was a part of the Sweet Slick and Sly, and I was the DJ at that time. I was DJ Cool Ray. And I evolved to the early 90s. I picked up the pen and the pad and started writing. Actually, all our members, what was happening is all our members were getting locked up. So at one point we looked and everybody was locked up. So I just had to take it from there, and I flipped it over to the rapping, picked up the pen and put down the DJing, and from there it was on.
Is this where you picked up the moniker MC Sugar Ray?
Yeah, that's why I picked up Sugar Ray when I started rapping, because before that I was DJ Cool Ray. And then I started rapping, and
Right.
that's where I came in with the MC Sugar Ray. Turn it down.
What was some of your earliest projects that you worked on? Was it Knock 'em Out, Sugar Ray, or was it Executive Class?
Well, Knock 'em Out Sugar Ray was put out. Hold on, we just making sure we live here. We tight with this.
Okay.
Hold on, brother. Phone down.
All right, we're cool.
Okay. I need another extension because it's not really rocking. Hold on, man. We're gonna tighten up the phone. We in the
All right,
club. We in the club. We in
all
my
right,
club, so we're gonna make the connection a little tighter,
no doubt.
and then we'll get right
Okay.
to it.
Looking like it's getting better.
It's looking like it's getting better. Well, actually, it's the more of a power situation, but they're getting me a new cord right now, so we can jack up. Is the power on right here, King? All right, there we go. We good to go now.
All right, all
All
right.
right, we back at it.
That was with Stranger D, right?
Yeah, that was with Stranger D. Well, actually, what had happened is we had met a guy. His name was Mike Cantor, and he had an independent label called Def City. And he wanted to get into the studio. He had heard about us through some other people that we was, heavy into the music, and we was writing, and he wanted to get into the music. So he approached us, and we went into the studio, and we put out the first single, Knock 'em Out Sugar Ray. Actually, the way we did that was we was looking for a beat, and we didn't actually have a beat. So we was watching a movie, and the name of the movie was called Kelly's Heroes. I'll never forget. And at the end of the record, the Knock 'em Out Sugar Ray, the original beat, came in. And we was like, yo, you heard that beat? That was crazy. It was an army movie, a military movie, some type of way we was watching it. And we went to New York, and we found the soundtrack, Kelly's Heroes, and we looped it and sampled it up and went in the studio and came up with Knock 'em Out Sugar Ray. First single ever.
What was that reception? What was that reception like when how you heard it, how the fans were?
Well, it was crazy because we Knock 'em Out Sugar Ray was like our real first venture. So we put it out on Def City Records, and actually, we was trying to get some radio spins, and Red Alert heard the record. We was trying to put them all over the place, and I remember we dropped some records up at Hot 90. It wasn't Hot 97, it was 98.7 Kiss, and Red Alert heard the record. And when Red Alert heard it for the first time, Red Alert loved it. So Red Alert, I'm always thankful to Red. He was the first DJ to put us on that prime time radio. And he started playing Knock 'em Out Sugar Ray every week. And what that led to was DJ Mark, the 45 King, was a personal friend of Red Alert's. He heard the record, Red playing the record every week, and he asked Red, yo, what's up with that record, man? I really like that. So we linked up with Mark. Red linked us up with Mark, and we got with the 45 King, and he did a remix on it. And when he did the remix on it, that landed us, and they continued. Red Alert still blasting it off on the radio. It landed us a single deal with Next Plateau Records, Eddie O'Loughlin and Next Plateau Records, and at the time they had Salt and Pepper and Herbie Lovebug, and that landed us on Next Plateau. But it was like a crazy situation because at the same time we got a single deal for Knock 'Em Out Sugar Ray. They was going through some other issues up there with Salt and Pepper and Herbie Lovebug, and the Next Plateau Records at that time went under and disbanded. So, you know, it was bittersweet because we had got the single deal and we was moving, and then right after that, they went under, and we was back to square one again, and it was crazy though. But that's how we first got it moving with that.
Was the next single with Mellow Records, Executive Class?
Right. So what happened after that is, you know, when Eddie's label, when he gave up the label thing and the label disbanded, he said that we thought about it, and we was on the block every day, and we was like, you know, man, we gonna put our own record out. You know, we had already started getting the radio play and everything was looking real good. So we was like, what we gonna do is we gonna put our own record out. So we got together with a couple of homies from the block, and Mello had a record label. He was from Jersey City. He had a label, and he was affiliated with Kool and the Gang. And he had a record label, and we looked him up, and we told him what we was doing. He came and he met with us, and we told him what we wanted to do, and he was with it. And we linked up. We went in the studio, and actually we did one single before we did Executive Class, and that was called If It Ain't Rough, It Ain't Right. And we put that out, but it didn't get the radio play like Knock 'Em Out Sugar Ray had, but it was still popping on the underground scene because we had guys like Teddy Ted and Special K, the Awesome Two, when they had their radio station on 105.9, they was popping it off and banging it. So we was slowly building our following. And then we went back in the studio and we put that Executive Class together. Me and Stranger D with the help of a couple of other homies from Jersey City, Magic, Sugar Chris. I got together with a couple of homies from the block. We put the record together. We got together with a couple of homies from the block, and we put that money in there. We put that drug money up, and we put out our own record. And that was the Executive Class on Mellow Records. You know, Mellow had the know-how, and we had the money. So Mellow,
Right.
we put the record together, and we put it out, and Mellow started shopping it. You know, he was doing his thing, and I give a lot of credit to Mello because, you know, initially he got us in the game heavy with that because he was going over to the radio station at that time. It was 107.5, and Funkmaster Flex was on the radio. Flex had just started on the radio, and he gave Flex the record, and Flex loved the record, and Flex started playing the record every night on 107.5. Banging it. And then what that led to is Mello made some connections with Craig Cowman. I don't know if you're familiar with Craig Cowman, but he's like the #1 guy in the industry. He's the big boss up at WEA, Warner Electric Atlanta, Atlantic Records. He's the president, Craig Cowman. And what we did was a personal showcase for Craig Cowman. Mello had sold the group to Craig Cowman as far as, yo, man, I got some guys and they tight. We got Flex playing the record every week. So they set up a personal showcase for us in New York. We went over there and we rented a studio. Craig Cowman rented a studio, and we went in there and we did a live show for him. And at the end of the live show, man, as soon as we finished the show, he was like, it's a done deal. We signed him on the spot. So he got the paperwork together and shot it to Mello.
So this is the Big Beat deal?
This is the Big Beat deal. And that's how we got on Big Beat. And then it was crazy because, you know, we went through some things with that, you know, being young artists. We wasn't 100% filled in with the contracts and how that situation went. You know, back then a lot of artists was getting jerked because it was a young thing. Rap was still young, you feel me? And the artist wasn't really paying attention to the paperwork and the publishing and things like that. So the guys up at that was the A&Rs for Big Beat at the time, which was Stretch Armstrong and Bobito, and they told us we weren't even aware that when we signed the deal with Mellow Records that we weren't getting any publishing. We weren't aware of that because we didn't read the contracts. Mello called us up and said, yo, Craig sent the contracts. Come and sign them. Y'all need to sign them so we can get it moving. We was just happy to have a record deal. So we went and we signed the contracts. Right. And we actually went into the studio and started working on the album. And that's when later on, Stretch Armstrong and Reef, Rob Tulo, that was the manager over at Satellite Radio, Shady 45, the program director. He was running it for a while. They was the A&Rs up at Atlantic, at Big Beat. This was before Big Beat got to deal with Atlantic. So they told us that we didn't know, you know, they had looked over the contract and they was like, hey, man, you guys don't know, you know, Mello's getting 100% of your publishing. And we was like, what? Because, you know, when we talked to Mello, all we did was word of mouth on our word. That's what we was dealing with. We was like, Mel, you know, everybody getting jerked, but, you know, we just want everything to be 50-50. As long as it's 50-50 with us, we good. But when they came back and told us that it wasn't 50-50, that at the time Mello was getting 100% of the publishing, we was like, what? So it was weird, though, because, you know, as being guys from the block, we when we came to sign the contracts, we was always leery. You know, when you're on the block, you don't really trust much. So we was really weary. So when we went to Mello's house to sign the contracts, my DJ at the time, BK, he wasn't even there. And when I went to the house, when we signed the contracts, I had my homie from the block sign BK's name. And I signed my name, but I did some funny, crazy shit just to cover my back. You know what I'm saying? I signed my name in a crazy way where it really wasn't my signature. And it was a blessing because lo and behold, later on, it came back to play. Because when we found out that Mello was getting 100% of the publishing, we went back with him to court and looked at the contracts. And it was so crazy because my man signed BK's name in the wrong way. BK's name is Brian, and my man from the block, you know, homies from the block, spelled it different, spelled it wrong. He put brain instead of Brian. So that was one way. And then my signature was looking so crazy to my original signature that we was able to get out of that deal with Mellow Records and sign straight with Big Beat Records. You know what I'm saying? So that worked out as a blessing. So we used the lawyers. We got some new lawyers, our own personal lawyers, and we signed directly. We renegotiated the deal as much as we could because when Mello made the deal with Big B, it wasn't the best deal for us. But at the time, he wasn't really concerned on getting us the best deal. He was concerned on getting that upfront money from Big B because we didn't know anything about the upfront money. So they gave him a bunch of upfront money. So he got the upfront money. But when we found out what was going on, we got lawyers and we got our thing together and we went back to the table and renegotiated and signed directly to Big B Records. It was weird because, you know, we had got together with the homies and we was trying to start our own label. But when Mello had sold it to Big B, he didn't sell the whole group. I mean, he didn't sell a whole team. Because we had signed a personal contract. It wasn't even a contract. It was like a one-page agreement with Mello saying that everything was going to be split amongst me and two other guys that was involved in the deal at the time, Adonis and Pete.
Right.
And when he signed us over to Atlantic, he had cut them out and he had signed me directly to Big B. I'm sorry, when we signed to Big B, Mello had went around the personal contract we had assigned me directly to Big B. So it was a catch-22 because we was like, well, what was we supposed to do at this point? We didn't have anything. And Big B wasn't willing to sign everybody. They just wanted to sign me as the artist. So it was really a funky situation because we had to take it because we couldn't go back to having nothing. So I went ahead and we discussed it with the homies and they was like, yeah, man, you gotta we got to take it, man, because that's all we got. We can't go back to nothing because getting a deal is not an easy thing. So we took the deal. I went and I signed with Big B Records, and I brought BK in, Brian Coleman, as my DJ, and we signed with Big B, and we began doing the album. Turn that over.
Can I ask you what that deal consisted of? Was it a 1, 2, 3, 4 album deal? How many albums was on this deal?
It was actually, we signed for a 2-album deal. And that's when we came out. We went in the studio. Like I told you, Stretch Armstrong and Rob Tulo, Reef, we used to call him. They A&R'd the project. It was for a 2-album deal. We went in the studio and we began working on the deal and started working on the album. It wasn't for a lot of money though. That was crazy, you know. It was we got a little advance, but it was primarily to pay for the studio and those things like that, the video. So we went into Power Play Studio in Queens, Long Island City. That was the big studio. Everybody was going there at the time. Large Professor, Beatnuts. That was the main studio. Everybody worked out of there. And we started working out of Power Play Studio. And we started working on the album, man, and getting it done.
Can you take me back to some of those sessions? What were some of your best memories of recording that album?
It was crazy because, you know, we was dealing with now, you know, artists getting $1 million deals and they lit, you know what I'm saying? So, but we didn't get the deal wasn't for that much. I think our first deal was for 50,000. You know what I'm saying? So we went in the studio. So we didn't have a big budget. What it was like when we were going to the studio was crazy. What we used to have to do is we used to go to the studio and we used to be hungry. So you know what we used to do? We would go to the store and we would cop like $10 worth of turkey, $10 worth of cheese, a bunch of bags of chips and a bunch of drinks, you know, juices, orange juice and stuff. And we would go back to the studio and that's how we was eating in the studio. We couldn't even order food at the time. You know what I'm saying? We was making turkey and cheese sandwiches and rocking like that, chips. And, you know, but it was real though. You know what I'm saying? We had some of the best engineers at the time, Anton and Greg Street. So we had a lot of good engineers, and it was just more about working. We wasn't even concerned with the money, man. You know, we was just happy to be in the studio, being able to, you know, work on our craft and tighten it up in the studio with the chance to put records out. We was just happy about that. It wasn't even about the money.
You worked with in-house producer T-Ray on 4 tracks, including the infectious single "Not Gonna Be Able to Do." What do you remember about working with him on some joints, selecting some of the songs he was putting out?
Craig Cowman he was a personal friend of Todd Ray's, T-Ray. And T-Ray was doing a lot of things for Craig, producing a lot of tracks for Craig over at Big B. So Craig plugged us in. He was like, yo, I got this guy named T-Ray. He's dope. I want y'all to hear him. So we met with him in New York. We went out to eat, and we vibed immediately. So we sat down, and we went into the studio, and we started putting some joints together. And he hit us with it was like 3 or 4 joints. Not Gonna Be Able to Do It was one of those joints. Put Your Boots On, which was the title track for the album, the name of the album. A couple other joints, but the Not Gonna Be Able to Do It joint was the big joint, and T-Ray blessed us with that. And he was good working with him. He was solid. He was solid. He was thorough. He was about his game. He was sharp with it. Shout out to him. T-Ray, I ain't seen him in a long time, but shout out to him, man.
No doubt. The first single ended up being "Not Gonna Be Able to Do It." Did that drop before the whole album was complete, or while the album was being done?
Well, actually, the first single was The Head Cracker. We had this single was called The Head Cracker, and that we dropped that. Actually, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I didn't like The Head Cracker. You know what I'm saying? Turn that down. I didn't like The Head Cracker. You know what I'm saying? But Stretch Armstrong liked The Head Cracker. It was a James Brown sample. It was a sample from a James Brown record. But you know, the label was big on The Head Cracker, but I didn't like it, man. We was from the hood. I'm from the block. I wanted something harder. You feel me? But you know, who was us? We was just happy to be there at the time. So Stretch believed in it. Atlantic Craig believed in it. So that was actually the first single. We went and shot the video for that and put that out, The Head Cracker. and then we dropped the album. So as we were bubbling
Okay.
off the head cracker, Not Gonna Be Able to Do It just start coming. It just start coming. And then Q-Tip, which is my man, One Love, the Tribe Called Quest, Q-Tip, that's my man, for sure. He called up the Big Beat, and he told Stretch and them, yo, man, Double X Posse, that Not Gonna Be Able to Do It, that's the hottest joint out. And that prompted Big Beat, and, you know, them, we was already getting a vibe on it from the album being out. So that prompted them to say, yo, let's get back in the studio, shoot a video, and put Not Gonna Be Able to Do It out here. Q-Tip went on record on a few magazines saying, yo, Not Gonna Be Able to Do It is the hottest new record out in the whole industry, smashing it up. And at the time, you know, Tribe Called Quest was popping, so Q-Tip's word was counting at the time, you know? So we put the album out, Not Gonna Be Able to Do It, start bubbling up, man, and we start feeling it. And then the world just started catching it. And it was like, from there.
The song went #1 on Billboard Hot Rap Singles in '92. What was that feeling like?
It was crazy because, you know, we was on Big Beat at the time. But Not Gonna Be Able to Do It started creating such a buzz that Craig got a major deal with Atlantic Records. So we went from Big Beat, the whole Not Gonna Be Able to Do It scene shifted over to Atlantic Records, the major label. And we really started going. But I tell you, man, when we got the word that Not Gonna Be Able to Do It, we got the word that it was 2 weeks away and it was climbing on the charts. So we was like, all right, we climbing. We was like, what? And it was climbing. Then the next week it climbed higher. And then we was like, yo, they was like, yo, y'all got a good chance of being #1, man. And we was like, you know, at the time, it was weird because like we were just doing what we did, you know. But it became surreal when it got close to being #1. Having the #1 record in the country on Billboard was, and when it hit #1, it was a really surreal feeling, man. It was really unbelievable, you know. We was excited and we started seeing the impact of that. And what really said it is, and the week before it hit #1, when it was getting ready to make #1, we landed an interview with Frankie Crocker, the legendary Frankie Crocker, on the radio. He was on 107.5. Wow. We went up there and the record was hitting #1 that week. And that's when we really started to understand what we was dealing with, man. When people started calling in and saying how much they loved the record, and he was playing it on his show and they played it that night, and everybody was calling in like, yo, that record is crazy, we love it, we love it. So when we left that night, man, we really started understanding the impact. And then we started touring, and what we did is we went back to the Billboard and we sat down with Craig, and the record was popping so much that Leo Cohen, if you're not familiar with Leo Cohen, he was the president of Def Jam at the time. Him and Russell Simmons was running Def Jam, but Leo was actually doing the day-to-day at Def Jam. Leo Cohen reached out to us, and he said that he wanted to manage the group. So we sat down and we met with Leo. We went to his house. He had the loft, and we sat up in there, and he listened to our stuff, and he was like, yo, I'd love to manage you guys. So we then signed to Rush Management, Rush Artist Management. And we went and talked to Craig, and Leo was like, let's get him on tour, man. Let's get him out here on tour. So we set up a tour of the East Coast. And we didn't have a bunch of money, so you know what we did? We jumped in a van. They rented us one of the big vans, one of the 15-passenger joints. And we jumped in that van. And we went up and down the East Coast, man. You know what I'm saying? All the way out to to Virginia, to South Carolina, North Carolina, but primarily the East Coast. And we was out there for like 3 weeks, man. We was doing shows, and we wasn't even really getting paid for these shows. It was like a promo tour. But, you know, Atlantic was footing the bill. They gave us a certain amount of money to eat every day. But when we came back off that tour, Not Gonna Be Able to Do It was lit. And from that point on, it was just uphill from there, man. We was getting top dollar for shows. We was performing all over the country, all over the world at that point.